The frame didn't fall. She shoved it. Right in front of everyone I loved, my 25-year-old sister, Mia, pressed her hand against my $3,000 custom family portrait, the one centerpiece I hung with pride in my brand new condo, and slammed it so hard it shattered into the floor. Glass flew everywhere. Laughter died mid-sentence. And then she looked me dead in the eye and sneered, "You never deserved this family's love, Emily." I was 28. I had spent a decade working double shifts, building a life from scratch, and that painting wasn't just expensive, it was earned. But Mia didn't care, not when I refused to buy her a Tesla as an engagement gift. And what made it worse? My mom, the woman who used to read me bedtime stories, who used to call me her strong one, gently touched my arm and whispered, "She's just sensitive." Sensitive? No, that was calculated. And that wasn't the worst betrayal of the night. Because hours later, while cleaning up the mess, I found a sealed envelope hidden under the dessert trays. Inside, forged inheritance documents. And the handwriting? Mia's. They thought I'd crumble beneath the glass, but I found something sharper than revenge. Funny how one portrait can cost $3,000. But the truth behind it could cost you your entire family. If you've ever stood frozen while someone twisted your success into shame, don't hesitate to drop a comment that simply says, "I've been there." Funny how one shove can crack open years of silence. 3 months earlier, I never thought betrayal could sound so sharp, so final until I heard the glass break. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 28, a marketing executive in Los Angeles, and tonight was supposed to be the proudest night of my life. My dream condo, the one I worked years for, was finally mine. Floor-to-ceiling windows, polished hardwood floors, a balcony overlooking the city lights. It was everything I imagined during those long nights when I lived off vending machine dinners and coffee-fueled deadlines. Tonight was my housewarming, a celebration of all the sacrifices I made to get here. Friends, colleagues, even family gathered around, glasses of champagne catching the glow of string lights. But then, in an instant, the sound of joy was swallowed by the sound of shattering glass. I turned just in time to see my younger sister, Mia, her hand still on the frame of the $3,000 custom family portrait I had commissioned. It had been my centerpiece, a symbol of new beginnings, of unity, of pride. She had shoved it hard against the wall until it toppled, crashing onto the floor in a spray of glittering shards. The portrait was ruined, fractured beyond repair. The painted smiles of my family split open like a wound. The room fell silent. Conversations cut mid-laugh, mid-toast. Eyes widened, gasps filled the air, but I couldn't hear much beyond the pounding of my own heart. And then came her words. Words I will never forget. Words that still sting every time I replay them in my mind. "You never deserved this family's love, Emily." She sneered when she said it. Her voice was dripping with venom, her eyes blazing with something I couldn't name. Resentment, maybe hatred. But it wasn't just what she said. It was the way she said it. Like she meant it. Like every sacrifice I'd ever made for this family meant nothing. Like my success was some sort of crime. I thought I knew my sister. I thought I understood her moods, her tantrums, her endless demands. I thought she was still just the spoiled youngest child of our family, the one everyone tiptoed around because she was sensitive. But nothing prepared me for the brutality of that moment. Her words cut deeper than the glass she shattered at my feet. I stood frozen, my champagne glass trembling in my hand. The city lights behind me twinkled through the windows, a cruel reminder that outside these walls, the world was still beautiful and bright. Inside, though, my world was splintering just like the shards scattered across my floor. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some staring at me, others at her, waiting for my reaction. But all I could do was breathe, shallow, uneven, my throat tight with disbelief. What had led her to this? Just days before, Mia had demanded a $50,000 Tesla from me, insisting I gift it to her as if I owed her something. When I refused, when I offered instead to help her find steady work or even loan her a smaller sum, she stormed out, her face twisted with rage. I thought that was the end of it. Another one of her tantrums that would blow over. But here she was, proving me wrong in front of everyone I cared about. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about the Tesla. It wasn't even about the painting. It was about years, decades of favoritism, about a family dynamic where I was always the responsible one, the one expected to endure, while Mia was coddled, excused, forgiven for everything. And maybe she hated me for growing strong under the weight of those expectations, while she remained dependent, fragile, desperate for validation. As I looked at her, I realized something else. This was war. Not the kind fought with fists or shouting, but the kind fought with words that scar, with betrayals that dig under your skin and stay there. She wanted to humiliate me, to drag me down to her level, to make me question whether I truly belonged in this life I built. And for a second, it almost worked. I blinked back the sting in my eyes, my voice trembling as I finally managed to speak, though not out loud, only inside my own head as though whispering to myself. I thought I knew my sister, but her words cut deeper than the glass she shattered. That sentence played in my mind like a mantra, the only thing I could hold on to as I forced myself not to crumble in front of everyone. My lips pressed into a thin line. I straightened my back, even as my knees felt weak. The air was heavy, the silence unbearable. The smell of spilled champagne mixed with the metallic tang of dust from the broken frame. The twinkle lights strung across the ceiling flickered slightly, as if even the electricity could feel the tension hanging between us. I didn't scream. I didn't lash out. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. But inside, my chest was burning with a mix of rage and heartbreak. Because betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. It comes from the people you thought you could trust, the ones who were supposed to protect you. And when it comes from your own sister, it cuts differently. If you're listening to this, maybe you're asking yourself, what would you have done if your sibling betrayed you like this? Would you fight back? Would you walk away? Or would you freeze like I did, watching everything you worked for get smeared with their bitterness? I don't know what the right reaction was, but I do know this. That night changed everything. That night, with shards of glass glinting at my feet and my sister's words echoing in my skull, I realized I could no longer ignore the truth. The favoritism, the manipulation, the endless cycle of enabling her, it had all led here. And if I didn't draw a line now, if I didn't finally put up boundaries, then I would lose everything I had fought so hard to build. The portrait was gone, but the wound she left ran deeper than any canvas could capture. I wish I could tell you that was the worst of it, that after she stormed out, the night ended quietly, that life returned to normal. But I can't, because that moment was only the beginning. Behind her sneer, behind her words, was a history I had tried to forget, and secrets she had been keeping, ones that would unravel the very foundation of our family. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was the sound of breaking glass and the silence that followed. So let me take you back to where it started, to the backyard of our childhood home, to the first cracks that appeared long before the portrait shattered. Because betrayals like this don't come from nowhere. They grow, little by little, over years of favoritism and neglect. And to understand why Mia did what she did, You have to understand where we came from. Drop a comment. What would you do if your sibling betrayed you like this? When I think back to the moment Mia shattered my painting, I realize it didn't come out of nowhere. That cruelty had roots, long and tangled, planted years ago in the place we both called home. Our house sat in a sunny suburb of Los Angeles. From the outside, it looked like the picture of a normal middle-class family. White shutters, a lawn that smelled of cut grass in the summer, and a faded basketball hoop leaning slightly to one side. But behind the front door, behind the cheerful curtains my mom sewed herself, there was always a divide. At 15, while most of my classmates were worrying about prom dresses and weekend sleepovers, I was working a summer job at the corner grocery store. The air inside smelled of onions and cleaning bleach, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floor as I stocked shelves. I'd come home with my palms raw from lugging boxes of canned goods, my fingertips stained faintly from ink off receipt paper. Every dollar I earned went into an old coffee tin I kept hidden under my bed. I was saving for something I wanted desperately, a bike of my own. Not a fancy one, just a used one I could ride to school, to work, to escape the claustrophobic walls of that house whenever I needed to breathe. The day I finally bought it, the garage smelled of oil and dust as I wheeled it inside. The paint was chipped, the chain squeaked, and the seat sagged a little, but it was mine. My heart pounded with pride as I ran my hand along the handlebars, the calluses on my fingers pressing into the cool metal. That bike wasn't just transportation, it was freedom I had earned, inch by inch, paycheck by paycheck. But that pride didn't last long. Just a few weeks later, Mia, 7 years younger than me, came bursting into the driveway with a brand new scooter. Bright red, gleaming, the sunlight bouncing off its polished handles. She hadn't lifted a finger for it. No shelves stocked, no sweat dripping down her neck under fluorescent lights, no hiding coins in a tin under her bed. It had simply appeared, like magic, like all her wishes somehow came true with no effort at all. I remember standing in the doorway of the garage, my greasy, squeaky bike behind me, as Mia's laughter echoed across the driveway. She rode circles around me, the scooter's wheels smooth and fast while I stood silent, swallowing down a lump in my throat. When I asked Mom about it that night, my voice tight and my hands still sore from the grocery store, she sighed and said the words that would repeat themselves throughout my life. Mia's more sensitive, Emily. She needs us more. Her tone was gentle, like she was explaining something obvious, but to me it felt like a slap. More sensitive? Needed more? I needed too. I just never said it out loud. I needed rest. I needed support. I needed someone to see how hard I was trying. But in our house, my needs never seemed to matter. Every penny I earned felt like freedom, but Mia's freebies stung like betrayal. I can still see the cluttered garage in my mind. My bike leaned against a stack of dusty boxes filled with old Christmas decorations, its chain leaving a faint smear of grease on the concrete floor. Beside it sat Mia's scooter, shiny and untouched by struggle, like a jewel in a pile of rust. That image has never left me. Two symbols sitting side by side, one born from sweat, the other handed over without question. Sometimes I wonder if that was the first moment I began to resent her. Not the kind of resentment that explodes in yelling matches, but the kind that seeps quietly into your bones. I smiled when she showed off, clapped half-heartedly when she did little tricks in the backyard. But inside, I was thinking, why does she get it all so easily while I have to bleed for scraps? Our backyard patio told the same story. The furniture was faded, the cushions thin from years of use. I'd sit out there in the evenings, homework spread across the table, the sun casting long orange shadows, while Mia sprawled out with lemonade someone else had poured for her. She'd complain that the ice melted too fast, that the bugs were biting, that she was bored. And every time, Mom or Dad would rush to soothe her, to fix whatever tiny inconvenience she claimed was unbearable. Me? I was expected to handle it, to study harder, to work longer, to grow up faster. At 15, I didn't have the words for what I felt. I just knew it hurt. I knew it didn't feel fair. And yet, I kept going, convincing myself that hard work meant something, that if I just kept pushing, one day I'd be recognized. One day I'd finally matter as much as Mia did in their eyes. Looking back now, I realize that favoritism doesn't just spoil the child who receives it. It poisons the one who doesn't. It taught Mia entitlement, that her wants mattered more than anyone else's needs. And it taught me that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I sacrificed, I would always come second. And maybe that's why, years later, her words at my housewarming cut so deep, because they weren't new. They were an echo of every unspoken message I absorbed growing up. You don't matter as much. You don't deserve as much. The contrast between us was never just about objects, bikes and scooters, hand-me-downs and gifts. It was about love, about worth, about who was chosen, over and over again. That resentment simmered quietly through the years, shaping me, hardening me, even as I pretended it didn't. And though I didn't know it then, those early cracks in our childhood would one day split wide open, leading to the chaos that destroyed my portrait and nearly destroyed me. By the time I turned 25, I had finally built a life that felt like mine. College had been brutal, long nights fueled by instant noodles, part-time jobs that left my feet aching, and scholarships I fought tooth and nail to win. But the grind paid off. I signed the papers for my first condo in Los Angeles, a sleek, modern space with clean lines, high ceilings, and a view of the city lights that seemed to whisper, "You did it." Every piece of furniture, every plant on the balcony, every dollar of rent came from me. My sweat, my sacrifices, my victory. Meanwhile, Mia was 21 and drifting. She bounced from one job to another, bartending one month, quitting the next, spending weeks in bed before deciding she wanted to try social media influencing. She was always in between something, never settling, never building. But somehow, her phone was always the newest model, her weekends always filled with Coachella, with Vegas getaways, with late-night rideshares back from concerts she couldn't afford. How? Mom and Dad. They couldn't seem to stop bankrolling her life, no matter how many times she let them down. I heard her whining more than once, her voice carrying from the kitchen to the living room whenever I visited home. "Why can't you cover my festival tickets? Everyone else's parents help them out." Their response was always the same. Sighs, excuses, the gentle reassurance that Mia just needs a little more time. It was the same pattern I'd grown up with, but it hit differently now. I had clawed my way up while she lounged on a cushion built from their endless forgiveness. The contrast burned every time I visited her cluttered apartment. Dishes stacked high, laundry spilling over chairs, her rent half paid by our parents. I'd sit on her sagging couch, my eyes stinging from the smell of stale takeout and cheap candles, and wonder how two people raised under the same roof could live such opposite lives. And yet the bigger contrast, the one that stayed with me, wasn't about condos or phones or who paid for what. It was something I stumbled on by accident, something that unsettled me in a way I couldn't shake. One weekend, I went home to help my parents clear out the attic. The air was heavy with dust, thick enough to sting my throat, and the beams of sunlight cutting through the small window illuminated floating motes that danced like tiny ghosts. Cardboard boxes leaned precariously, some split open at the corners, spilling out yellowed papers and old clothes. That's when I found it. A photo album I didn't recognize. Its leather cover was cracked, the pages inside warped from years of heat. I opened it, expecting old family snapshots, birthdays, school plays, vacations, and at first, that's what I saw. But then there was Mia. Not the Mia I knew, not the dramatic teenager glued to her phone, but little Mia, maybe 7 or 8 years old, grinning up at the camera. Beside her, though, was someone I didn't recognize, an older figure blurred just enough that I couldn't make out the face. The arm around her shoulders wasn't Dad's, the shoes at the bottom of the frame weren't familiar, and page after page, there they were. Mia and this unknown figure, sometimes in our backyard, sometimes at the park, sometimes even inside our house. A chill crept over me despite the attic's heat. Who was that? Why had I never seen these photos before? And why, as I flipped further, did the pictures become stranger, more secretive, like snapshots taken when no one else was supposed to be looking? I snapped the album shut, dust puffing into the air. My hands tingled as if I'd touched something electric. My condo was my victory, but that album made my skin crawl. What was Mia hiding? I told myself it didn't matter. I had deadlines to meet, projects at work, a future to focus on. Mia's mysteries, her secrets, her endless excuses, they weren't my responsibility. So I slid the album back into the box, closed the lid, and shoved it behind a stack of old yearbooks, out of sight, but not out of mind. That night, back in my condo, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the balcony, the city humming below. My building smelled faintly of lavender from the diffuser I kept near the door. My kitchen gleamed from the countertops I scrubbed every evening. It was a far cry from Mia's chaos, from the dusty attic, from the unknown face burned into my memory. And yet, even surrounded by everything I had worked for, I couldn't shake the unease. Because sometimes it's not the things you see clearly that haunt you. It's the things you catch at the corner of your eye. The things that don't fit. The things that whisper, you don't know the whole story. At 25, I thought the biggest difference between Mia and me was that I had built a life while she was squandering hers. But looking back, I see now that there were darker contrasts I couldn't yet name. Contrasts hidden in attics, in blurred photographs, in the spaces no one wanted to talk about. And if I had paid attention then, maybe I would have been ready for the way those secrets would come crashing into my life later, sharper than glass, crueler than any insult she could throw. 3 years ago, I never would have believed someone could stand in the middle of my family's chaos and not flinch. But that was before Alex. It happened on an ordinary Sunday evening at my parents' house. The kind of family dinner that always carried a quiet tension underneath the clinking of silverware and the smell of roasted chicken. Their dining room had this false warmth to it. Candles glowing on the table, framed family photos on the walls, the hum of conversation that could turn sharp in a second. I had grown used to it, bracing myself each week for whatever storm Mia decided to stir up. That night, the storm came quickly. Mia had begged our parents for concert tickets, front row seats, expensive ones. When they told her no, her voice cracked the air like breaking glass. "Are you serious? You can't even do this one thing for me," she shrieked, her fork clattering against her plate. I sat frozen across the table, my stomach tightening, the old ache rising in my chest. It was a familiar script, Mia demanding, Mom softening, Dad staying silent, and me. The silent witness, ashamed for feeling angry, ashamed for being tired of it. But Alex was there too, sitting beside me meeting my family for only the second time. He was a graphic designer I'd met through work, a man who came from a steady family where fights ended with apologies instead of slammed doors. I half expected him to shrink into the background, to nod politely and pretend not to notice the dysfunction spilling across the table. He didn't. As Mia's voice rose, Alex didn't look rattled. His eyes stayed calm, steady, like an anchor I didn't realize I'd been searching for. He didn't argue with her, didn't try to appease her. He just turned his head slightly, caught my gaze, and for the first time in my life, someone was silently telling me, "You don't have to carry this alone." After dinner, when Mia stormed off to her room and the rest of us scattered like broken pieces, I walked outside with Alex. The air was cool, scented with orange blossoms from the neighbor's tree, a sharp contrast to the suffocating tension inside. I leaned against the porch railing, my hands gripping the wood so tightly I felt splinters press into my skin. "She always does this," I muttered, my voice small, "and I always end up trying to make it better somehow, to calm everyone down." Alex didn't interrupt. He just let the silence stretch, the chirp of crickets filling the air around us. Then, in that calm, steady voice that would later become my safe place, he said, "Her tantrums aren't your fault, Em. You don't have to fix this." I froze, because no one had ever said that to me before. I looked at him, expecting judgment, but all I saw was certainty. A certainty I had never been given in my own home. Inside, I could still hear the faint sound of Mia's muffled sobs, Mom's soothing words, Dad's low sighs, the cycle repeating itself, as it always did. But for the first time, I was standing outside of it, literally and figuratively. Alex saw the truth I ignored. My family was enabling Mia's chaos. It was both a relief and a heartbreak to hear it spoken aloud. Relief, because finally, someone understood. Heartbreak, because it meant the family I had been clinging to was never going to change if we kept excusing her. "Then what do I do?" I whispered, more to myself than to him. "You set boundaries," he said simply, "and you keep them. You don't let her drag you into fixing problems that aren't yours." His words sank in, deeper than I admitted that night. I wasn't ready to change yet, but I carried them with me, replaying them when the guilt grew too heavy or when Mia's accusations chipped at my self-worth. That evening was the first time I felt hope, that maybe I wasn't wrong for wanting peace, for craving a life beyond the chaos. But frustration clung to me too, because hope didn't erase the reality. My parents would still cave, Mia would still rage, and I would still be expected to endure it. Still, Alex gave me something no one else had: perspective. He didn't try to fix it for me, didn't minimize it. He just showed me that I didn't have to accept it as normal. And slowly, I began to realize that his steady gaze, his quiet strength, was the foundation I needed to start drawing the lines I had been too afraid to draw. It would take time, of course. Years of unlearning, of standing my ground, of listening to his words echo when my resolve wavered. But in that moment, on that porch with the faint glow of the dining room lights spilling out behind us, something shifted. I wasn't alone anymore. Hope rose quietly that night, even as the tension inside still lingered like smoke after a fire. And though I didn't know it then, that hope would carry me into the battles yet to come, the engagements, the betrayals, the shattered glass. For now, though, I just stood there, breathing in the cool night air, and let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I had found someone who could hold me steady while I learned to hold myself. 2 years ago, when Alex slipped a ring on my finger, I thought the hardest battles were behind me. For once, life felt like it was tilting in my favor. I had worked hard, endured enough family storms, and here was this man who looked at me like I was more than the chaos I came from. My engagement should have been a moment of pure joy. Instead, it became the spark that lit Mia's jealousy like gasoline. The night of our engagement party glowed with string lights stretched across the outdoor venue. Laughter mixed with the clink of champagne glasses. The dance floor throbbed with music, and for the first time in a long time, I felt celebrated. I remember looking around the room, at my friends smiling, at Sarah adjusting her dress as she carried a tray of cupcakes she had baked for the occasion, at Alex squeezing my hand as though to remind me I wasn't alone. But then there was Mia, always Mia. She stood in the corner, scrolling furiously on her phone, her lips curled into the kind of smile that wasn't joy, but satisfaction of a different kind. Every now and then she would glance up, her eyes narrowing on me, then dart back down to her screen. Her fingers flew so quickly, it was as if the phone was an extension of her rage. I didn't know until later what she was typing that night. Rumors, posts on social media painting me as selfish, as someone who had stolen the spotlight and shoved her aside. She didn't use my name outright, but everyone who knew us could read between the lines. Words like greedy, attention seeker, and fake spread like wildfire. While I was smiling for photographs, Mia was planting poison behind the scenes. The irony was bitter. I had chosen Sarah as my maid of honor because she had stood by me through thick and thin, through late-night tears and early morning triumphs. Still, I had included Mia in the bridal party, thinking it would keep the peace. I thought she'd appreciate being part of the celebration, but peace was never what she wanted. She wanted control. At one point, she cornered me near the dessert table, her voice low but sharp enough to cut. I deserve to be maid of honor, not Sarah. The air smelled of frosting and vanilla, but her words soured everything. I forced a smile, steadying my glass before it slipped. This isn't about deserving, Mia. It's about loyalty. Her eyes flared, and then she walked away, phone already glowing in her hand again. I tried to shake it off to enjoy the night. I danced, I laughed, I held Alex close. But in the middle of that joy, my phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from a number I didn't recognize. She's listening. Better watch what you say. The words chilled me. My skin prickled, my heart hammering as though the music had been sucked out of the room. I scanned the crowd, trying to spot who it could be. Guests were laughing, raising glasses, snapping photos. Nothing looked out of place. And yet, everything suddenly did. The idea lodged in my chest like a shard of ice. Was Mia recording me? Secretly listening, gathering bits of my private life to twist and weaponize? I couldn't prove it, but the thought slithered through my mind, coiling tighter with every passing minute. I slipped the phone back into my clutch, my hands trembling. I told myself it was just a prank, some sick joke, but the timing was too sharp, too cruel. The message came right when Mia had stormed away. The suspicion felt too perfect to ignore. The party swirled on around me, dancing shadows, pulsing lights, Sarah laughing with her husband, Alex spinning me in a circle that should have felt like freedom, but all I could think about was that text, the idea of hidden eyes, of whispers waiting to be released. Mia's rumors already hurt, but that text felt like a knife. What was she planning? When the night ended, Alex and I drove home with our gifts piled in the back seat, his hand resting protectively on my knee. He chatted about the playlist, about how Sarah had been a lifesaver with the decorations, about how beautiful the evening was. I nodded, smiled where I could, but inside my chest was a storm. At home, I slipped out of my dress and stood barefoot in the kitchen, the city lights stretching endlessly outside our condo windows. My phone lay on the counter, dark and silent, but I couldn't stop staring at it. The glow of the screen earlier had burned into my mind. That single message had cracked something open, some hidden door into a darker part of Mia's intentions. I didn't know if the text was real or just a game meant to rattle me, but it worked. I felt eyes on me even in the safety of my own home. I caught myself lowering my voice when talking to Alex, hesitating before sending messages, scanning every corner of every room as if something or someone was lurking. And through it all, Mia's glares haunted me. At the party, under the lights, with music and champagne all around us, she hadn't celebrated me. She had stared at me like she wanted to tear me down piece by piece, until nothing was left. That night, I lay awake in bed, Alex's steady breathing beside me. I stared at the ceiling, every muscle tight. My engagement was supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter, a celebration of love and stability. But with Mia, nothing was ever simple. She wouldn't let me have that peace. I didn't know it yet, but that message was a warning, the beginning of something much bigger, much darker. And the more I tried to ignore it, the closer it would come, until it exploded into my life in ways I could never have imagined. Planning the housewarming party should have been one of the most joyful experiences of my life. Alex and I had finally settled into our condo overlooking the Pacific, modern, sleek, with sunlight flooding the rooms in the mornings and soft ocean breezes drifting in at night. To me, every corner of that condo was a testament to survival and grit. The smooth marble counters that gleamed under pendant lights, the balcony where the horizon stretched endlessly, the polished hardwood floors that whispered with every step. This was the space where I wanted to gather everyone who mattered and show them what I had built. But joy never lasted long when Mia walked in. She arrived hours before the party, supposedly to help, though it quickly became clear she had come for something else. The moment she stepped inside, she wrinkled her nose, scanning the half-finished decorations and stacks of unopened boxes. Her presence shifted the air. Even the soft lavender scent from the diffuser couldn't mask the heaviness she brought with her. I was balancing on a chair, stringing fairy lights along the edge of the balcony railing. The sunlight was starting to dip, turning the sky a wash of coral and gold. My hair stuck to my forehead from the humidity, my fingers tangled in wires. From the doorway, Mia crossed her arms, her silhouette sharp against the glow. "You know," she said, her voice flat but cutting, "those lights make the place look tacky, like a college dorm, not a housewarming." The knot in the light slipped from my hands. I forced a small laugh, hoping to steady myself. "They're not supposed to be fancy. They're for warmth, for ambiance." Her lips twisted into a smirk. "Ambiance? Or are you just trying too hard?" Her words sank into me like stones. Every detail I had chosen, the flowers arranged in glass vases, the silver flatware set neatly on the table, the playlists I curated for hours, suddenly looked cheap and desperate under her glare. Then her eyes landed on the portrait. The $3,000 custom painting leaned against the wall, waiting to be hung above the dining room table. The frame caught the light, golden edges glowing softly. It was more than just art. It symbolized a beginning. I imagined it presiding over family dinners, holidays, quiet mornings with Alex, a permanent reminder of the life I had worked for. Mia tilted her head, scoffed, and let the words drop like poison. $3,000. For this? You're just flexing your cash. Her tone carried enough disdain to echo into the kitchen, where Alex was unwrapping wine glasses. He froze, looking over his shoulder, his brows furrowed. I felt the hammer sweat slick in my palm. My hands trembled, not just from anger, but from something colder. That cryptic text from weeks ago replayed in my mind. "She's listening. Better watch what you say." It had haunted me in the quiet hours of the night, my phone glowing faintly on the nightstand. Now, with Mia's eyes on me, it felt less like paranoia and more like prophecy. I tried to hang another photo, but my grip faltered. The frame nearly slipped, clattering against the wall before I steadied it. My chest tightened, breaths coming shallow. The air smelled faintly of sawdust from the freshly drilled holes, mingling with the briny breeze that drifted in from the balcony. Every nerve in my body was on edge. Mia leaned casually against the counter, sipping from a soda she had poured without asking. She tilted her head, watching me with a half smile. "Relax," she said lightly, though her tone was anything but kind. "You're acting like this party is life or death." Wasn't it, though? Not literally, but symbolically. This party was proof that my hard work, my sacrifices, had led to something solid, something beautiful. But here she was, puncturing every detail with disdain, undermining me before the first guest had even walked through the door. Alex came closer then, resting a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "It looks perfect, Em," he murmured, his voice steady, grounding. His presence anchored me, but only for a moment, because Mia wasn't finished. She moved through the condo like a critic touring an exhibit she had already decided to hate. She tugged at the napkins folded neatly in their rings. "Plain," she muttered. She eyed the bottles of wine stacked beside the counter. This is what you're serving. Couldn't spring for something better?" She skimmed over the seating chart I had painstakingly arranged and let out a laugh, sharp as glass. "Oh, God, you're really putting me next to Sarah? Wow, guess you want drama." She spat Sarah's name like it was venom, as if the mere thought of sitting beside her was some calculated insult. Every jab sank deeper. I wanted to argue, to tell her to stop, but the words caught in my throat. All I could think of was that text, the warning, the promise of eyes and ears in places I couldn't see. Every glance Mia gave me felt like confirmation that something was waiting, coiled and ready to strike. That night, after she left, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The glow of my phone on the nightstand was a silent threat. I scrolled through messages, checking and rechecking, waiting for another cryptic text that never came. The silence gnawed at me. Silence meant anticipation. Silence meant she was planning something worse. In the days that followed, I buried myself in preparations, forcing smiles as I set up decorations, arranging the flowers again and again until the petals bruised under my fingertips. But even as I worked, dread gnawed at me. Every creak in the condo, every ping from my phone made my chest seize. And when Mia returned for another round of help, I knew exactly what she was doing. These weren't complaints about napkins or wine. These were warning shots, calculated strikes meant to weaken me before the final blow. Standing in my living room, arms aching from hours of hanging lights, sweat drying sticky on my skin, I finally admitted it. Mia wasn't here as family. She was here as a storm. And I could already feel the thunder building, the pressure in the air before it breaks. Mia's jabs felt like warning shots, and that text kept me up at night. As the sun sank, casting a fiery glow across the ocean outside, our condo shimmered under the fairy lights I had fought to string just right. To anyone else, it might have looked flawless, a dream. But I could already feel the cracks, thin and dangerous, crawling beneath the surface. It was just weeks before the housewarming when Mia found a new way to test the limits of my patience. She had texted me out of nowhere, "Let's grab coffee, just the two of us. I need to talk." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Some part of me still wanted to believe that beneath her tantrums and spite, there was a sister who might finally want to connect. The cafe she chose was one of those trendy LA spots where the air buzzed with conversation and the hiss of milk steamers. The place smelled of roasted beans and vanilla syrup, and through the wide glass windows you could see rows of palm trees swaying lazily against the afternoon sun. People typed away on laptops, cups clinking, spoons stirring. It should have felt ordinary, but as soon as I saw her waiting at a corner table, tapping her manicured nails against her phone, I knew this wasn't going to be a heart-to-heart. She looked up, her eyes gleaming with a sharp kind of excitement. That gleam, the same one I'd seen when she got her scooter years ago, when she manipulated our parents, when she won by taking instead of earning, sent a chill down my spine. "Em," she said brightly, as though nothing had happened between us. "Sit down. I have the perfect idea." I slid into the chair opposite her, the wooden seat creaking under me. A waiter passed, the clatter of plates behind him punctuating the moment. I wrapped my hands around the ceramic mug in front of me, letting its warmth steady me. Mia leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was about to share something precious. "So, I figured out what you can give me for your engagement gift." My stomach tightened. "Engagement gift?" I repeated, frowning. She nodded eagerly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Yeah, you're starting this big new chapter. You've got the condo, the fiancé, the career. I thought it would be symbolic if you helped me start fresh, too." I stared at her, uneasy. "Okay, what are you talking about, Mia?" Her smile widened. "A Tesla." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. The cafe noise swelled around us, laughter from the barista, the scrape of chairs against the floor, but her words rang in my head, sharp and clear. "A Tesla?" I repeated slowly. She leaned back as if presenting her case. Yeah, a Model Y, maybe. 50,000, give or take. That's nothing for you, Em. You're loaded. I nearly dropped my mug. My heart kicked hard against my ribs, the sound of it drowning out the chatter around us. I searched her face for some trace of humor, some crack in her expression that would tell me this was a joke. But her eyes were serious, shining with the entitlement she wore like a second skin. Her demand wasn't just wild, it was a slap after all I'd sacrificed. Mia, I said carefully, my voice steady even though my pulse raced, I am not buying you a $50,000 car. Her expression darkened instantly, the gleam in her eyes shifting to something harsher. Why not? You have the money. You just bought that condo. You're marrying Alex. You act like you've got it all together, but you can't even do this one thing for your sister. I gripped the edge of the table, nails pressing into the wood. This isn't about money. I've worked for everything I have, and if you want a car, you need to do the same. Her lips quivered, but not with sadness, with rage. Still, she forced tears into her eyes, tilting her head so the light caught them just right, as though she were on stage. Crocodile tears. You don't get it, she whispered, her voice breaking theatrically. I need this. Everyone else gets help. Why not me? You're supposed to care about me, Em. I shook my head, my throat tightening. I do care, which is why I'm offering to help you find a job. I'll even give you a small loan to get started, but I'm not handing you a Tesla. That's not love. That's enabling. For a second, I thought reason might break through. But then she slammed her palm flat against the table, silverware rattling. Heads turned. You're so greedy, she hissed. You pretend you're this responsible, loving sister, but you're selfish. You just want to watch me struggle while you sit in your fancy condo with your perfect fiancé. You don't deserve what you have. The words burned, sharper than the bitter coffee in my throat. Around us, the cafe bustled on, machines hissing, cups clattering, conversations weaving in and out. But in that moment, it felt like the world had gone still, all eyes on me as my own sister tore me down in public. I set my mug down with care, forcing my voice not to shake. Mia, I'm done being your punching bag. I love you, but I won't be manipulated like this. Her chair screeched against the floor as she shoved it back, rising with a dramatic sweep of her purse. Fine, she spat, her face twisted. Don't help me. Just remember this moment when everything falls apart for you. She stormed out, the glass door slamming shut behind her, the bell above it jingling like an afterthought. I sat there, hands trembling, the taste of coffee suddenly sour on my tongue. My chest felt tight, like I'd been running though I hadn't moved. My mind replayed her words again and again. You're greedy. You don't deserve what you have. As I left the cafe, stepping into the sunlight and the sway of palm trees, I tried to steady my breathing. But the truth was, I was shaken. Because it wasn't just her demand for the Tesla that scared me. It was the venom in her voice when I said no. And deep down, I knew this confrontation was only the beginning. The confrontation over the Tesla didn't end at the cafe. I should have known it wouldn't. With Mia, nothing ever stayed between us for long. She had a way of twisting things until they bent into stories that suited her. And of course, those stories always found their way back to our parents. It was a Saturday evening when they invited us all for a barbecue. The kind of gathering that was supposed to be lighthearted, charcoal sizzling, the smell of burgers drifting into the warm LA air, kids from the neighborhood laughing in the distance. But under that haze of grill smoke, tension hung heavier than the summer heat. Dad stood by the barbecue, tongs in hand, flipping chicken while the flames snapped. The picnic table was cluttered with paper plates, potato salad, and sweating glasses of lemonade. Mom fussed with napkins, her smile tight, as if she could decorate over the unease. Alex sat beside me, his hand brushing mine under the table, steadying me like always. Then Mia arrived. Late, of course, but breezing in like a queen making an entrance. She was all sweetness at first, hugging Mom, kissing Dad on the cheek, complimenting the food. For a moment, I almost believed maybe she'd let the Tesla argument die. But when she sat down, fork in hand, her voice shifted, soft, syrupy, calculated. "I've just been so stressed," she sighed dramatically, glancing at our parents. "Trying to figure out transportation, how I'm supposed to get to work interviews without help. I thought Emily might understand, but..." Her voice trailed off, her eyes shimmering as if tears might fall. My jaw clenched. "Tell the truth, Mia," I said evenly. "You didn't ask for help with interviews. You demanded a $50,000 Tesla." Her head snapped toward me, eyes flashing, but she quickly masked it with another sigh. "I just wanted something modest, reliable. She's exaggerating." The fork in my hand nearly bent under my grip. "Reliable? You specifically said Tesla. You called it your engagement gift." Dad shifted uncomfortably at the grill. Mom set her fork down, her hands trembling slightly. "Girls," she murmured, "please, let's not ruin the evening." But I couldn't stay quiet. Not this time. "I'm not exaggerating. She wants to live off everyone else's hard work and call it love." Mia's mask slipped then, her voice sharpening like broken glass. "Maybe I wouldn't need so much if you weren't so selfish, Emily." She leaned closer, her smile turning cruel. "You know what happens when people act selfish? Things break." The words hit me like a slap. "Things break when you're selfish, Emily." Her tone was low, almost casual, but the threat in it was unmistakable. My blood boiled, but my skin went cold. For a moment, the sounds of the barbecue, the crackle of flames, the hiss of meat, fat dripping, the cicadas buzzing in the trees, faded into silence. Her words echoed in my head like a bell tolling, ominous and certain. "Is that supposed to be a threat?" I asked, my voice trembling with fury. She smirked, stabbing at her potato salad with her fork. "Just an observation." Alex shifted beside me, his hand tightening around mine, grounding me as my pulse raced. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but I shook my head slightly. This was between me and her. Dad cleared his throat from the grill, his voice strained. "Come on, both of you, we're family. We don't need to fight like this." Mom's eyes darted between us, pleading. "Let's not ruin the party, honey." But wasn't it already ruined? What kind of family dinner ended with one sister threatening the other? I looked at them, my parents, the people who had coddled Mia all her life, now shrinking in their seats, desperate to smooth things over instead of confronting her poison. The injustice made my chest ache. She lied, manipulated, threatened, and still they begged me to keep peace. Peace. What did peace even mean in this family? Silence? Swallowing everything she hurled my way? Pretending I wasn't being torn apart inside just so the evening could stay pleasant? Mia smiled as if she had won, her fork tapping against her plate in a slow rhythm. The smoke from the grill curled through the air, stinging my eyes, choking my lungs. It felt symbolic, the way it burned but left everyone pretending they didn't notice. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake my parents and demand they see what she was doing, but all I could do was sit there, fury simmering as the cicadas droned louder and the weight of her words pressed down on me. Mia's lies made my blood boil, but her threats hit like a warning bell. Dinner ended in uneasy silence, broken only by the scrape of plates and the hiss of the grill being extinguished. Mom tried to smile, tried to chat about the weather, about neighbors, anything to fill the void. But the tension lingered, thick as smoke. As Alex and I walked to the car later that night, the warm air heavy around us, I knew the barbecue hadn't been about family at all. It had been about power. Mia had spun her story, played her part, and thrown her warning. And our parents, our enablers, had let it slide again. But I had heard it, clear as the snap of the grill. Things break when you're selfish, and I couldn't shake the dread that something already had. The morning of our housewarming dawned clear and impossibly bright, as if the city itself was celebrating with us. Sunshine spilled through the windows, gilding every surface of the condo in soft gold. The ocean shimmered just beyond the balcony, waves catching the light like broken glass, scattered across a vast blue canvas. Inside, the place hummed with preparation, the faint clatter of trays, the sweet scent of frosted desserts waiting on the kitchen counter, the hum of speakers playing a carefully chosen playlist. By afternoon, the condo was alive. Guests toasted under the glow of string lights I had strung myself across the balcony. Their glasses clinked like delicate bells. The murmur of laughter rose above the low notes of jazz. For a while, it felt like perfection, a tableau of everything I had fought for, polished and warm. I moved through the rooms with a practiced smile, hand brushing Alex's arm, pausing to laugh with Sarah as she arranged pastries, nodding politely as colleagues admired the view. My parents stood near the balcony doors, chatting with neighbors, their voices light. This was the moment I had imagined when the work felt endless, when exhaustion threatened to drown me. A home filled with light, success made tangible. But then, always, there was Mia. From the start, she unsettled me. She was too quiet, no barbs about the wine, no digs at the decorations, no theatrical sighs about being overlooked. Instead, she hovered at the edges, her smile brittle, her gaze sharp as a blade, hidden under silk. She circled the room like a shadow, silent but heavy. And that silence was worse than her usual noise. The portrait hung above the dining table that night. My $3,000 commission, the centerpiece of the condo framed in warm golden wood, brushstrokes capturing the essence of family. Guests had admired it already, pausing to comment on its richness, its permanence. Every time I looked at it, I felt steady, proud. It was more than decoration. It was proof that I had built something lasting. And then, Mia moved. It happened so suddenly and yet so slowly that I can still see every detail in my mind. She stepped forward, her hand rising almost lazily to the frame, her fingers curling against the bottom edge. For one suspended moment, she looked at me, eyes gleaming with something venomous, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. And then, with a sharp shove, she sent it crashing down. The sound exploded in the room. Glass shattered into 1,000 jagged shards, scattering across the hardwood in a spray of glittering fragments. The frame splintered, the painted smiles fractured beyond repair. Gasps rippled through the guests, conversations halting mid-word. Someone dropped a glass, the crack of it barely audible over the echo of the portrait hitting the floor. Even the music seemed to falter, fading into silence. And then came her voice, low and dripping with triumph. "You never deserved this family's love, Emily." The words pierced deeper than any shard of glass, slicing straight through me. Her smirk lingered as she stepped back, her eyes locked on mine, daring me to break. Every gaze in the room turned toward me, the weight of their shock pressing against my chest. My throat tightened. Heat surged through me, a flush of humiliation and rage tangled together. For a moment, it felt as though she had ripped open the old wounds I had tried so hard to stitch shut, putting them on display for everyone to see. Her words cut deeper than the glass. This wasn't about the portrait. It was personal. It was war. I wanted to scream, to shout that she had threatened this very thing. Things break when you're selfish, Emily. The memory of her sneer at the barbecue thundered in my head. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a plan. And tonight, she had chosen to execute it. But as if the broken painting wasn't enough, fate had one more twist to offer. Earlier that morning, while setting out silver platters for desserts, I had stumbled across an envelope tucked carelessly among them. At first, I assumed it was a forgotten card from a guest, but something about the handwriting struck me. It was too careful, too deliberate, and yet oddly familiar. My stomach had tightened as I slid it into my pocket, telling myself I'd examine it later. Now, standing over the shards of my portrait, my hands trembling, I pulled it out. The room buzzed with whispers, the smell of spilled wine mingling with the metallic tang of broken glass, but I forced my fingers to tear open the flap. Inside were copies of family documents, legal papers, but the names, the signatures, they weren't right. They were altered, forged. My eyes scanned the lines and recognition struck. The handwriting was the same I had glimpsed years ago in that dusty attic album, in letters Mia had used to manipulate. It was her. She hadn't just destroyed a portrait, she had meddled with the very foundation of our family, inheritance papers, twisted to her advantage. My chest tightened. The room tilted. For a heartbeat, I thought I might faint. The documents shook in my hands, the ink blurring as my vision swam. Rage and dread collided inside me. But even then, even with my pulse hammering, I knew I couldn't let her see me crumble. Not here. Not now. I folded the papers quickly, slipping them back into the envelope and pressing it against my side. That fight would come later. Tonight was about survival. Drawing in a shaky breath, I straightened my shoulders. Ignoring the crunch of glass beneath my heels, I turned toward the guests. My lips curved into a smile so forced it felt like my face might crack. "Desserts are ready," I said, my voice startlingly calm, almost cheerful. "Please help yourselves." The silence lingered for a moment longer before breaking. A few guests shifted uneasily. Others exchanged glances, but slowly, the current of the party began to move again. Plates clinked, voices rose, though subdued, whispers threading through the air. Alex slipped his hand into the small of my back, his eyes filled with questions I wasn't ready to answer. His presence steadied me, even as my heart raced. And Mia, she stood by the wreckage she had created, her smirk sharp as ever, her silence louder than any accusation. She didn't need to say more. Her message was carved into the broken glass at our feet. Inside, I was shaking, fury and heartbreak clawing at my insides. But I held myself upright. I would not let her win. Not yet. Because this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. The party didn't end when the portrait hit the floor, though in my heart, it felt like it should have. Guests lingered, shifting awkwardly between whispers and forced laughter, the tension thick enough to cut. I forced myself to keep moving, my legs carrying me toward the dessert table as if on autopilot. My voice came out steady, but inside my chest was tight, burning with every beat. "Desserts are ready," I said, smiling through the cracks, pretending the shards of glass behind me weren't catching the light like scattered accusations. My hands trembled as I picked up a serving knife, sliding it into a cake. The sweetness of the frosting filled the air, but it did nothing to mask the bitterness coating my tongue. Alex was at my side, his palm pressed gently against the small of my back, grounding me. I leaned into his touch for just a second, letting his presence steady the storm inside me. Guests came forward hesitantly, their voices hushed, their eyes darting toward the wreckage by the dining table. The portrait lay in ruin, glass glinting under the soft glow of party lights, its fractured pieces reflecting faces, too polite to stare directly but too curious to look away completely. I caught fragments of murmurs as they reached for plates. "That was no accident. What's her deal?" one whispered, not as quietly as they thought. A flush of heat surged through me, shame tangling with rage. They had seen it. All of them had seen the mask slip from Mia's face, the venom in her words, the calculated shove that reduced my centerpiece to rubble. "You never deserved this family's love, Emily." The line played on repeat in my head, looping endlessly, cutting deeper each time. My chest constricted, so tight I thought I might shatter like the glass on the floor. But I kept moving, serving slices of cake, smiling as if my heart wasn't bleeding. I listened to the faint hum of the speakers, the music now muffled and dim, almost like it knew the night had soured. The fairy lights on the balcony flickered in the breeze, their once cheerful glow now harsh, mocking. Alex leaned close, his breath warm against my ear, his voice soft enough that only I could hear. "You're enough, Em. She can't take that from you." My throat ached. I wanted to believe him, to let those words replace Mia's, but they felt like two opposing forces fighting for space in my mind. Her voice was louder, sharper, replaying like a cruel soundtrack. "You never deserved love." Did she mean family's love? Did she mean any love? My mind spiraled, dragging me back to every childhood moment where I had felt like the second choice, the afterthought, the one expected to endure while Mia was coddled. Maybe this was what she had always believed, that I was unworthy, unlovable, undeserving. But no. I gripped the edge of the dessert table, my nails biting into the wood, steadying myself. I wouldn't let her voice define me, not here, not tonight. Her words echoed in my head. "You never deserved love, but I wouldn't break." Guests tried to pick up the rhythm again, laughter rising in small, brittle bursts. I caught my mother's eyes from across the room, her face pale, lips pressed into a thin line. Dad hovered near her, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed firmly on the broken portrait, as if staring at it long enough might undo what had happened. Neither of them said a word. Not to me, not to her. That silence cut almost as deep as Mia's words. I felt the envelope pressing against me where I had tucked it away earlier, its weight heavier now, like a stone against my ribs. Those forged documents weren't just paper. They were proof of something darker. Proof that her sabotage wasn't a spur-of-the-moment tantrum, but part of a pattern, something calculated. She hadn't only tried to humiliate me in front of everyone I cared about. She had twisted the very foundation of our family behind closed doors. The dessert knife trembled in my hand as I cut another slice, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Guests avoided the sharp glitter of glass on the floor, stepping carefully around it, but I couldn't. Not inside. The image of it, the sound of it hitting the floor, was burned into me. The lights dimmed as the evening wore on, the warm glow now tired, sagging like the weight in my chest. Conversations thinned, guests excused themselves earlier than planned, their polite smiles unable to hide the whispers still clinging to the air. By the time the last plate was cleared and the final guest drifted out, I stood in the center of the condo, staring at the wreckage. The fairy lights still twinkled on the balcony, but their glow felt hollow, their reflection warped in the shards scattered across the floor. Alex slipped his arm around me, his thumb tracing gentle circles against my shoulder. I leaned into him, exhausted but unbroken. "I won't let her destroy me," I whispered, more to myself than to him. Because this was no longer about one night, one insult, one painting. This was about every lie, every manipulation, every time Mia had been shielded while I had been left to endure. Her sabotage wasn't just cruelty. It was a warning of what she was capable of. But if she thought she could break me, she was wrong. This was where the real fight began. The condo felt unbearably quiet after the party. The last guest's footsteps had faded down the hall, leaving only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the scattered debris of a night that should have been a celebration. Shards of glass from the shattered portrait still glittered in the corners, reflecting the dim light like tiny accusations. I hadn't swept them yet. Somehow, leaving them there felt more honest, a reminder of the truth Mia had tried to bury under years of manipulation. That night, after Alex finally fell asleep beside me, I sat in the glow of my laptop, the forged documents spread across the desk like scars. My hands hovered above the keyboard, trembling. I needed answers, real ones this time, not the stories Mia spun so easily. The cryptic text, the portrait, the whispers at the party, they all pointed to something deeper. And then Piece by piece, the puzzle revealed itself. Emails, bank statements, receipts buried in digital folders. The numbers told a story more damning than words ever could. Mia had racked up nearly $15,000 in gambling debts, online casinos, late-night transfers, payments disguised as loans. My stomach churned as I clicked through line after line, each transaction a nail in the coffin of the sister I thought I knew. But the deeper blow came when I realized she hadn't faced these consequences alone. Our parents had covered for her, quietly, repeatedly. They had drained their savings, shifted money around, done everything they could to keep her afloat, while letting me believe I was the only one working to hold this family together. The betrayal burned hotter than anything Mia had ever said to me. My own parents had chosen silence over truth, enabling her chaos while letting me shoulder the weight of resentment. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to stop the tears. But then I remembered the envelope, the forged inheritance document, the familiar scrawl I had seen once before. I reached for the dusty photo album I had taken years ago from their attic, flipping through its yellowed pages until I found them, letters Mia had written as a teenager. At the time, I hadn't understood. Notes to our parents, begging for sympathy, crafted in shaky handwriting, meant to look like mine. Words like, "I don't feel loved. I need more. Please help me." She had forged my voice, stolen my vulnerability, and used it to tilt their favor toward her. Even then, she had been playing a long game. And now, with the inheritance document in my hand, the circle closed. It was the same style, the same manipulative pen strokes. She had been rewriting our family narrative for years, reshaping it to keep herself at the center. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the laptop washing over me, my chest heaving. The truth was heavier than I imagined, but also clarifying. Mia's lies ran deeper than I knew, but I was done being their enabler. The next evening, I called for a family meeting at my parents' house. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old wood, the same house where we had eaten 100 Sunday dinners, laughed and argued under the same roof. But this time, the atmosphere was different, charged, brittle. Mia sat slouched on the couch, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. My parents hovered nervously, Mom twisting a dish towel in her hands, Dad pacing like he wanted to be anywhere else. I placed the folder of evidence on the coffee table. I know about the gambling debts, $15,000. And I know you, I said, looking straight at them, covered for her, behind my back. Dad stopped pacing, his face drained of color. Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. Mia shifted in her seat, her mask faltering for just a second before she let out a laugh. "You went snooping. Impressive, Em. You always were the responsible one." Her flippancy made my blood boil, but I stayed calm. This isn't about snooping, it's about the truth, about the lies you've been weaving since we were kids, those letters you forged to get sympathy, the inheritance documents you tried to alter. How far does it go, Mia? How much do you think you can take before there's nothing left? The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, Dad lowered himself into a chair, his shoulders sagging. His voice was low, ashamed. "We hid her debts, but you're right. We need to change." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We just wanted to protect her. We thought if we gave her what she wanted, maybe she'd finally be happy." "Happy?" I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. "You didn't protect her. You enabled her, and you betrayed me in the process." The room trembled with the weight of the truth. Mia shifted again, her smirk gone now, replaced with something harder, colder. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand. "No more. If you want my help, it comes with conditions. Therapy, a real job, accountability. I won't throw money at your chaos, Mia, and I won't let this family keep pretending your destruction is normal." The words hung in the air like a verdict. My parents exchanged a glance, the kind that carried years of unspoken understanding. For once, they didn't rush to defend her. didn't tell me to keep the peace. Instead, they sat in the silence, the weight of the evidence too heavy to deny. Mia looked at me, eyes blazing, but I met her stare without flinching. For the first time in years, I felt something new take root inside me. Not just anger, not just hurt, but power. I gathered the papers, sliding them back into the folder, my movements precise. This ends now. We either move forward with truth and boundaries, or we keep drowning in lies. The choice is yours. The room stayed quiet, save for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. And in that silence, I knew the tide had shifted. 6 months later, the condo feels transformed, as if the walls themselves have finally exhaled the tension they once held. The echoes of shattered glass and venomous words have been replaced with lighter sounds, the scrape of cutlery against porcelain plates, the soft hum of voices that no longer compete but try, cautiously, to connect. Every so often, genuine laughter bubbles up, tentative but real, like the first green shoots after a long storm. The morning light pours through the balcony doors, spreading across the dining table in sheets of gold. Outside, the Pacific stretches endlessly, waves folding against each other in their steady rhythm. The ocean breeze slips into the room, cool and salty, rustling the white curtains and carrying the faint scent of seaweed and sun-warmed air. The smell mixes with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sweetness of powdered sugar clinging to croissants, making the whole place feel like a sanctuary. Our table isn't set in extravagance, but in something better: comfort. A platter of pastries dusted with sugar, bowls of ripe strawberries and blueberries, butter knives resting across plates of toast, little jars of honey and jam that catch the sunlight in amber hues. Steam curls up from ceramic mugs, softening the edges of the morning. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm sitting at a table where love has space to breathe. Mia sits across from me. I study her face in the gentle light, searching for the sharp edges that once defined her. They aren't there. Her smile is small, cautious, but softened in a way I haven't seen since we were children. She holds her mug carefully with both hands, the rising steam blurring her features for a moment, making her look calm, human. Her eyes don't flick toward her phone, because it's not even on the table. Instead, she tells us about her new job. She doesn't boast, doesn't spin fantasies. She just talks about the exhaustion of waking up early, the rhythm of working hard, the quiet pride of seeing her own name on a paycheck she actually earned. Her voice dips lower when she mentions therapy. No jokes to dodge the weight of it this time. Just a plain admission. It's hard, but it's helping. And for a second, in that admission, I see something I thought I'd lost. The possibility of humility in her, maybe even the fragile start of pride, the good kind. I sip my coffee, the bitterness grounding me as I watch her. My heart wants to believe. My mind still hesitates. Is this change real, or just another mask she's learned to wear? She's worn so many. But for once, I choose not to tighten my grip on suspicion. People can change, but only when they choose to. The room grows quiet, filled only by the ocean's steady sigh outside. Then Mom clears her throat, her eyes wet, her voice trembling as if every word costs her something. She sets her napkin down in her lap, folding it too carefully. "We were wrong to shield her, Emily," she says, her words sharp with regret. "You opened our eyes." Beside her, Dad nods, his jaw tight but his gaze unwavering. His voice is low, weighted. "We thought we were protecting her, but we were protecting ourselves from facing the truth. All we did was push the weight onto you, and we let you carry it for too long." The words land heavier than any apology rehearsed for show, because they're not excuses. They're confessions. For the first time, my parents aren't minimizing, aren't smoothing over, aren't begging me to keep the peace. They're facing what they chose to ignore. I breathe in deeply, the smell of coffee and salt air filling me. My fingers circle the warm mug in front of me as I finally answer. It took boundaries to get us here. Painful ones. I had to stop saving her for all of us to finally see what was really happening. And even now, I don't know if it will last. But at least, we're not pretending anymore. The silence that follows doesn't feel sharp. It doesn't press down on me. It feels spacious, reflective, the kind of silence that allows everyone to sit with the truth, not hide from it. Through the balcony doors, sunlight glitters across the ocean's horizon, steady and infinite, like a reminder that storms can pass, but the sea remains. I glance at Mia again. She's looking back at me, and for once she doesn't flinch or smirk. She doesn't roll her eyes or look for the nearest exit. She simply nods, slow and quiet, as if to acknowledge everything without words. Maybe it's gratitude. Maybe it's surrender. Maybe it's both. Boundaries saved us, but I still wonder, will Mia's change hold? The question lingers in me, like the aftertaste of dark coffee, warm, grounding, but edged with something sharp. My heart is lighter than it has been in years, but it's still cautious, because I've learned that love isn't about rescuing someone from their own mistakes. True love means letting them stand in the rubble of their choices, trusting that they can climb out of it on their own, and being there only if they choose to walk forward. The brunch stretches on and laughter grows easier, more natural. Dad chuckles at something Alex says. Mom leans back in her chair with her face more relaxed than I've seen in years, and Mia even laughs once, the sound softer, stripped of its edge. The ocean breeze slips in through the curtains, carrying the mingled scents of sugar, salt, and coffee. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm bracing for the next strike. For the first time, I let myself just be. The broken portrait, the glass, the words that once echoed like daggers, they're still part of our story, but they don't own the ending. I turn my gaze outward as though through the invisible lens of whoever is listening, and let my voice soften but stay steady. Have you faced family betrayal and set boundaries? Comment your story, like if this hit home. Subscribe for more tales of growth, and share with someone who needs to hear this. The scene closes not with shattering glass, but with sunlight spilling golden over the table, with hands reaching for pastries, with the sound of waves steady against the shore. Fragile, imperfect, but alive.